should we do this? Okay, let's start out with the big picture. Like, what's the album gonna be about? Or figuring out the centerpiece of the puzzle. See, earlier this year, I wrote a song called No Promises. That was about being sick of how often promises are broken, that it damages relationships, trust, or even people's life themselves, as well as like how carelessly these promises are made in the first place. So let's not make another promise. No one's gonna be hurt. Problem solved? Yeah, but hang on a second. Isn't that just another promise? Like we're promising to not make another promise. I know it's such a paradox, but that's exactly what we need to lean into, because the whole album could just be a journey of how we reach that conclusion of no promises, which is just another promise, like I said. That would then bring us right back full circle. Therefore, how about we start the album with disappointment? Okay, now that we have the starting point and the ending points of the album, let's think about a more specific structure to categorize the different kinds of tracks in the album, since we can't just talk about one thing throughout the whole thing. Similar to how you have like multiple paragraphs within your essays. I don't know why I relate to that. So how about we split it into two parts, which will make it natural for the first part to be about disappointment. Since we're starting with it, we're also trying to portray disappointment as the other side of the coin to promises, that it's a inevitable coexistence of a promise. So when it comes to disappointment, it can take on different forms, like your disappointment in someone else, or someone else's disappointment in you, or especially your disappointment in yourself, which we probably encounter the most that not enough people really talk about. Okay, once we run into a dead end with disappointment, I think we'll naturally transition into the second part, which is about chasing the promise of no promises, although I don't really know what kind of stories or songs I would put in there. But one thing for sure that's been on my mind is that in order to let go of the expectations or promises that eventually lead to disappointment, we'll have to let go of the future. Because we make promises for the future, right? And that will put pressure on us in the present to live up to that, even the past as well, because the promises that we have made in the past could have probably led to the disappointment that we feel in the present. So I think letting go of both the past and the future is the answer. Okay, in addition to that, I do want this album to reflect my growth as an artist as well, and we might do that through the different music genres in the two parts, because disappointment to no promises is actually the two phases that I personally went through myself, so I do want my music to reflect that. So in the first half, the disappointment, we can have what I've always been comfortable with, like neo soul, R&B, or maybe lo-fi even. And then the second half, the no promises, we can have the new genres that I'm exploring right now, like indie rock, a little bit of metal, a little bit of gospel, or orchestral even. So yeah, now that we have like two clear buckets of where to put the songs in, I think we're gonna start looking at the songs I've already finished and then start putting them into the buckets that they belong. And then yeah, we might be able to work up to a track list already. Okay, track list. But why? Well, it's probably gonna be more of a checklist for me to see the gaps in the album that I need to fill in, because the songs I've already finished, the ideas have been communicating to each other in a way, and they're leading up to a bigger picture. And since we already worked out that bigger picture in a more structural way, we can now start to like pitch the songs to either half of the framework that we worked out and see which one of them belong to which half. Alright, I think I've kept you waiting long enough. What are the songs I've already finished? Let's go in chronological order, but before that, let's recap a bit. So the two halves of the album that we worked out are Disappointment and Acceptance, or No Promises. The first one that we have is Never Meant to Be.
I wonder how the clouds are floating around. I wonder how the rain keeps on pouring down. Yet I still haven't figured this out. What am I supposed to do now to get you to love this?
Okay, Never Meant to Be is about catching feelings and being in a one-sided love. And when you're in that situation, you are hoping or anticipating that the other person is hopefully feeling the same as you. And when it doesn't work out, it's disappointing. So I feel like that fits right in there. And then we have The Sun Also Needs the Sun. Yes.
Crashing waves that woke me up. I was never the sun in love. Don't swing Don't skip a beat, it's so gentle kisses.
But we all know what the sun does, right? Its sole purpose for existence is to shine on other people. But that can feel pretty lonely sometimes, because when you want to be out of the spotlight for a little bit, you can't really afford to. There's no one to replace you. It's also your job to comfort other people as well and be there for them. As the sun. That's why I named it the sun, also means the sun, because I tried to portray that metaphor of how lonely it is to be a light source for somebody else's life. So let's put it in disappointment too. Okay, to switch up the vibe a bit, we got this one, Enough to Love. See, when I told you there's a bit of rock and metal in this album, I really was meaning it. Enough to Love is about coming to terms with being yourself and being enough, just being yourself, and letting go of your own expectations of becoming someone else. I feel like that should be obvious enough where this song should go. And of course, we have No Promises, the one that inspired this whole album.
No promises, I won't do it, 'cause forever doesn't really exist.
It should be obvious where this one should go to. It's the ending point of the journey. So it's probably gonna be the last track in the album too, but we still don't know. Then we got Options, which is probably my favorite.
Finding myself weighing my options.
Okay, for Options, I'm feeling quite unsure to be honest, because the story of the song is about having multiple options, or at least feeling like you're having multiple options and like not really committing to any one of those. That, of course, brings along anxiety, and musically it's quite ambiguous as well when it comes to the contrast that I'm trying to portray between these two. So I'm probably gonna put it somewhere right in the middle there. You transition between the two. And then after that, we got Clouds Are Not Real, the most recent one that I worked on. I know I'm getting very creative with the titles. Okay, Clouds Are Not Real. The story behind this is probably my favorite. You know how when we used to be kids, or like now even, to be honest, we always imagine clouds to be the fluffiest things in the world, that you just want to like run around on the clouds. But in reality, you can't physically touch clouds, so in a way they're not actually real. So in this song I compare clouds to my dream and ambition of making music, because I always thought once I'm able to make my own music, I would be satisfied, I would be happy, but I'm not. And that's the reality I'm facing now. It's the epitome of disappointment, you might say. And it's also a wordplay on the phrase that many people often said, like when someone's in the cloud, that means they're like ecstatic and like super happy with their life or whatever. But this song is the exact opposite of that. And before you think that I forgot about this song, no, I have not. Yep. Full version of 20 I'm Sorry.